Welcome everyone to It Tastes Different Gaming Appetisers, and tonight we're going to do something a little different. We're going to have an opinion piece because everybody loves everybody else's opinions, right? All the assholes start talking. So tonight, in light of Anthem closing, we're going to talk about a subject of playing a game forever or owning a game forever, right? So you used to be able to own a game when you bought a physical copy of it, right? And now you just lease a license to use a game. But what happens when you buy something and the game shuts down, like Anthem? We can use Anthem as an example because it's most recent and freshest in everybody's mind. You know, I can think of a lot of other games like this, but, think of like, what was it? Beyond Space back in the day where you were the space, one of the first space MMOs, all the early MMOs and things like that. Earth and Beyond, that was the name of the game, Earth and Beyond. So think of Anthem. So now you can no longer play Anthem, right? If you bought Anthem and you owned Anthem, the servers are shut down, and guess what? You're SOL, right? How can game companies be allowed to sell something to you? Because I don't want to hear this bullshit that's just a lease license. I paid money for something. I did not pay to lease something. I paid to play something. And they no longer want to support it, right? Which is reasonable, right? We should never expect somebody to put something out there that they want to support and maintain forever. If it's not profitable for a company, the company is not going to keep hosting servers for it. What should happen? Everybody's got opinions. I'll save my opinion till the end and see if I match up with these guys on what they think, or maybe you do too. But let's use Anthem as an example. If Anthem was your game and you loved that game, but you can no longer play that game, what happens? I mean, is your time only, it was a $60 game when it came out. Is $60 only valid for the length of the game? Or maybe you bought it a year ago or before you knew it was shutting down or whatever, you bought it. Is $60 only worth that time, or what should happen? And like I said, this is an opinion piece, and we all welcome you to weigh in the comments as well. We welcome other opinions, even if it doesn't match ours. Or if you just want to say, hey, that Shane guy's fucking idiot, whatever.
You wouldn't be wrong.
We're all just a bunch of fucking idiots and a bunch of bumbling assholes. That's why we have opinions. But we'll start with the person who hated Anthem the most out of this group and go with Nick. You knew that was coming. But Nick, what do you think? Like you buy a game and then you can no longer play it. How, what do you think should happen when these companies decide, I no longer want to support a game that can't be played offline? Like Anthem.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about game preservation in the past, and I'm a firm believer in game preservation. I think if a company is no longer going to support or do anything with a title, that they should either put out, either sell the IP to someone, to another developer that is going to do something with that IP. Or give it to the public, right? Release the code out there so that way the public has it. Because there's a lot of modders and private servers out there that would definitely host a game like Anthem. And, we talked about it before we got on here, but, as far as Anthem goes, they would support it. They would host that game. They would probably mod it, add features and updates and various things like that, right? And make the game live on. We've seen that with several other games. With a World of Warcraft Classic before Blizzard decided they were going to do their own thing, right? Along with other titles that for some reason I can't think of at the moment, but there's tons of them out there. I mean, Star Wars has a private server, the Galaxies has a private server out there that does get updates, right? They do add new content, new updates, and various things like that to the game. So there's a lot of, especially MMOs, older MMOs. I think, what is it? City of Heroes. I think for a while, I don't know if they still have it, but for a while they had a private server that they were adding new content and bug fixes and various things like that. And it's just for the love of the franchise. So, and the love of the game. I hate when developers take a great IP and for me with Anthem, and the reason why I dislike Anthem is because I think BioWare had something good and they squandered that. They squandered it with Anthem. Like they had a good like foundation as far as an idea and kind of a somewhat of a foundation going for Anthem, but they just never did anything beyond that, right? They didn't know where to go with it once they crafted the base for the game. They're like, and now what do we do? And again, that was their first like foray into live service, and stuff like that. So they still had the training wheels on when it came to that type of game, but that's just, it is what it is. It's what happened. And it's kind of the same thing that happened with Platinum, when I think of Babylon's Fall, which was a horrible game, but that was also a live service game, and Platinum is not known for making games like that. Right. And so it was, again, one of those situations where the training wheels, and it kind of makes me think of Babylon's Fall in the sense of like, instead of killing that game off, what if that game was preserved, right? And given out to there could be a private server for it. Yes, it sucked, but I think the community could have potentially turned that game into a fun game, right? I mean, the mods and what the community out there, modders and designers and stuff like that can do with these older games to make them live on, and adding new content and all this stuff is amazing. Like they inject a new life, a whole new persona into these games. And a lot of modders and various things like that end up fixing a lot of the issues that these games have, or general like downfalls that these games initially had out of the gate. So I think that's what developers should do is, and I know they're not going to, but they should sell the IP to another company that actually wants to do something with it, right? Not just the first one that's going to give them the highest money, because that doesn't mean that they're going to do anything with it. Microsoft will be there to buy it for you for $8 billion, but they're just going to sit on it. We're talking about, making sure that a developer actually has a game plan for those titles, or just putting it out there for public use, for the public to be able to take that title and make it into something, right? I mean, the same thing would happen with, luckily for Ubisoft in this regard, they went the right route with the Crew, right? The Crew was going to go offline, and people made a big stink about that. And then they made the Crew offline mode or whatever, where you can play it indefinitely, right? Single player, the Crew. So they went the right route with things. But yeah, I mean, like, what they could have done with Anthem 2 is they could have just made it to where you still had Anthem, but there was no online features anymore, right? You could still play it co-op, like you basically, just has like a hosting a server in the game, and then your friends join that, and you can play through what's there, right? And so now it's no longer an online game where you have to connect to BioWare or whatever, Activision or whatever servers. You just connect to your friends and you guys play the game or whatever. And then they would have, and then the community would come together and have mods and various things that they would add to it, right? That you could download, and, a whole new, I mean, somebody would probably do a total conversion mod and make it like a whole different game, right? But yeah, I mean, the community can come together and do these things. So I'm all about game preservation in some form or fashion. Any game that's going to die off, I understand a company not wanting to pay for server maintenance or to distribute the game anymore. I understand that, right? But as consumers, and I agree with Pat, like, I don't like the fact of, oh, you just bought like a license, and whenever we decide we're going to revoke it and we're done with it, too bad about your money. It's like, no, I bought that. That's mine now. I should be the owner of this thing. And so doesn't mean that you have to support it indefinitely. It just means that I think every company should have maybe like by force or by law or whatever, they have to have a plan in place for when they're going to sunset that game, what they're going to do with that, either by giving it to, because we have that preservation library online, either giving it to them, Good Old Games is bringing a bunch of old IPs back, right? You give it to them and let them put it out on their storefront, because they'll make it, they'll update it and make sure it plays there. They can even host the online section of it, right? If they wanted to, or just give it out to the community in general, like some form or fashion, instead of just killing it off. I mean, that's my general consensus of what companies should do. They should have to have some sort of plan for when the game sunsets. It has to have some sort of plan as to what's going to happen with it, right? It can't just die. It has to be preserved or, whatever. And they have to have a plan in place for these games when they do go to sunsetting. That's what I think. Shane, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. That I understand the company not wanting to keep spending money on servers and whatnot to keep 20, 30, 100 gamers happy. I get that. But what I really hate is online modes. Always online. It's to make sure nobody's pirating. No, it's to force me to keep my game online. That's it. When my internet goes out, power go out, whatever, and I just want to play this game, I want to be able to play the game. I think Anthem is a great example of a game that should be able to be played solo. It's a great co-op game, and it's such a letdown because that game had so much awesome promise to it. And then they pissed it away. I don't get why, but they did. I don't think it should be legal to force a leased game, period. I think that's completely immoral and illegal, in my opinion. I buy a game, I pay $60. And this is before like Steam says you're not purchasing, you're leasing, or whatever the terminology they use. Before that, you'd buy a game. Well, it always had to be online. Well, son of a bitch, I don't want to always be online. I don't want to play online all the time. I want to be able to play this game solo. My internet sucks sometimes. It goes out. I want to play a game on my Xbox. I want to play a game on my PC. And it's going to say, no, you can't, sir, because you have to be connected to the internet to prove that you own the game that you're trying to play. Horse shit. I disagree with that, and I think it should be against the law. Now, when a game goes dead, when they shut the servers down like Anthem, make it take away the online requirements and let me play single player. There, fixed. Give out the code. Offer a modder or another company the ability to say, okay, you know what? You guys, if you want, you can lease this IP from us, set up your own servers, make a DLC for all I care. Try to keep the thing alive, because Anthem's biggest fault, and this is our example game, Anthem's biggest fault was the fact that they had no content after the end game. And it was from A to B of the main content was a blast. It was just a blast. It may not have been the most in-depth story-driven thing you'll ever play, but when you play with 3 of your friends and you're all freaking Iron Man, that's awesome. And they pissed it away because they had, I can't remember how long it took us to beat that game, but we wrecked it pretty quick. And then that was it. And Nick was like, well, I don't want to play tonight because we played everything twice. And, and we just all stopped playing. And I'm not blaming you, Nick, by the way. But that's just the way it is. I mean, one person gets tired of playing the same crap over and over, then, it's a co-op game and it's a game you play with your buddies and everybody's going to stop. So my personal opinion is make it illegal to make your games always online, to be forced to connect, plain and simple. That should be illegal. 2, if I bought a game for $60, that's my goddamn game. I should be able to play it offline. When you close your servers, I should be able to play it single player, plain and simple. if a game is 10 years past, make it to where you just put that code out there and people can, utilize it. I mean, you're not doing nothing with it. I mean, if you want to use it, you want to make a sequel, go ahead, make your sequel, but put that info out there. Let somebody else build a mod. Let somebody else build a server for it. I'm not a tech guy, but I do know that there's some games that modders are better for than the developers. Plain and simple. So if I was Anthem developers, I would have done exactly what I said. I'd have just leased out the license to it to somebody who wanted to, put up some servers and, create some DLC for it. I'd have done that. I guarantee somebody would have done it. Just, as long as you didn't overprice it, but I think somebody would have done it. And I think that should be done more. Me and Nick talked a long while back. You may not remember. We talked about playing Resident Evil Outbreak. It's an old PS2 game. I think we should still be able to play a game like that. We should be able to, if you own it, you should be able to somehow be able to use the internets, peer to peer, whatever, and be able to play a game like that. It's an old game, but I don't think when you purchase something, it should be killed off like that. It should be able to be completely ruined because they decided to end it. I think you should still have the option to be able to connect somehow to, your own server, your own whatever. I'm not a tech guy. I don't know if that's possible for most parts, but I think you should be able to do things like that. I think you should be able to play it on Steam, and he can play it on Steam. We can Steam together. That's just me. But I hate this kind of stuff. And R.I.P. Anthem. You were fun for the 10 hours we got to play you. What about you, Pat?
So I think that I am like in between you two guys on where I stand. Like I believe that companies need to have an exit strategy, like you said, Nick, that when you make a game, especially a game that's online only, you have to have an exit strategy for when you decide to stop supporting that game, right? Single player games, the plan is that you could still play them if you have like PS2 games, like unless because Outbreak was just it had co-op mode, right? You can't play co-op mode anymore because that network is no longer in existence. Could somebody consoles make that a little bit harder, right? Could somebody modify that? Probably not, because you can't access the network to update the game or anything like that. But you could probably emulate it on PC and do what you need to. Somebody could do that. But I think a game that's online only, once a developer stops supporting it, in my opinion, and you have to buy it or pay into it, however you want to say that, I think they should make the source code free. And what I mean by that is I don't mean that you can go out and make your own DLC, you can make your own part 2, because technically EA, BioWare still owns that IP. You can't make and sell something. And that's the whole point of that, right? I think they should still retain the IP, but they have to make the source code for free so that independent modders or developers could pick it up and be like, okay, we're just going to host our own servers, support it, add new content, do things like that. Because once you start getting into the whole leasing concept, I think you would lose out on pretty much all of it, because nobody is going to want to lease a game that is dying, that has a dying player base. Right? Because if you lease an IP from a company like EA, the intention is that it's going to be costly, so I need to be able to recoup my money. And that's just not going to happen with a game like Anthem, because you're not going to be allowed to rewrite and sell the game. You're not going to be allowed to rewrite it unless you lease the IP. Kind of like what BioWare is doing with Star Wars, right? They're pushing the development off to a different team, right? A different team is going to maintain that game and do all that stuff, and they're stepping away from it to focus on other BioWare games. So yeah. Excuse me. So I think that they need to have an exit strategy, and that exit strategy should be that, once we're killing it. So like Anthem is a perfect example. we're killing the game. The game is 6 years old. I think it came out in 2020 or 2021 or something like that. I can't remember. I know that in 2021 or 2022, we were supposed to get Anthem 2.0 and they killed that. And they just basically didn't do anything with the game for the last 5 years or so. But I think that, in my opinion, is what should happen, because while it is everywhere now that you don't own the game, we live in a society of subscriptions anymore where everything's a subscription. Your $70 for that game is a subscription to that game. And I don't necessarily know if Anthem will be able to come back in a private server type thing, because from my understanding is nobody's ever been able to get a hold of the source code. I read some stuff that supposedly like early versions of Anthem that came out had client side, server side on the local PC, so that you could access and run local, where you can run local and play without being online. But they removed that in the later version. So unless somebody's got some of that old code and can, without having access to source code, it makes it a lot harder, right? You're going to have to reverse engineer whatever you had on the client side, which you probably, if you have later versions, obviously they're going to help you. But I do believe companies need to have an exit plan. That exit plan should be making the source code to that public use access. That way, some modder can pick it up, can start running private servers, which means that you can't charge for it, because open source means no charge. It's free. You can't make money off of this. It's just for the love of the game.
Yeah.
But leasing an IP, if somebody wanted to pick up Anthem, they would have already done it, right? They would already approached CA and said, hey, I want to pick up this and lease the IP to make a second one or whatever.
Yes, but who developed Anthem? Who developed Anthem?
BioWare, under EA's thumb.
And BioWare is owned by EA, and is EA a good company for gamers? No. Somebody could have approached them, and EA was like, no, eat a bag of ass.
Yeah, but I mean,
this is my
you can't force a company to give up their IP just because they want to kill. So, in my opinion, obviously they need to retain their IP. There is no releasing of IP just because you killed off. Because who knows? Maybe in the future, EA says we're ready to try Anthem 2.0, Anthem 2, right? No, so they may, they probably won't. But I'm just saying it could happen. Weirder shit has happened, but. So, I mean, I think that they need an exit plan, but I also don't think that they need to relinquish their IP when they close the game down, because they could have future plans that involve stuff from that IP, right? Because a lot of Anthem feels a little bit like it came from, and I know it doesn't, so don't get me wrong here. A lot of it feels like it came from the Mass Effect universe, a little bit the sci-fi-ish theme, and some of the concepts felt like it, but it's BioWare, so that's why I feel it felt like that way when I played it. And yes, we did. We played the hell out of it till we got to the end game. And I'm like, there's no end game. And I think we played for a couple more weekends after that, but then it was just like, it's more of the same. So like I said, I think they need to have an exit plan, like Nick said. I think that's a perfect way of putting that. And it needs to be known to fans what the exit plan is. If I purchase this game and you guys shut down a year from now, what's the exit plan? Drop the source code, GitHub, whatever you want to put the repository out there. Free use, public use now, which means that, open source. We open source the code to this game, which does not give you the ability to do anything. You cannot make a game and sell a product. It becomes open source. Whatever you build with this is free, right? And it does not prevent them from making a sequel, the company from making a sequel, because they retain IP and all rights to the games.
I think they should take the source code, create an awesome Iron Man game. I mean, because you really felt like Iron Man in the game. And I think that's why it was so eye-catching when they first announced it. And then the demo was like, you just flew through a freaking waterfall, slammed to the ground, and shot 50 rockets at a herd of, whatever the creatures are called.
Yeah.
But there's so many games that I think if you buy a game and then they close the servers within 6 months, and you can't play it, I think you should get a full refund. That's
maybe. But I mean, because it was also kind of shitty of EA to also say, hey, we're closing down Anthem in January. And like, I don't know when it started, but I remember catching an article like, hey, Anthem closes down in January. And it was like September, November. And I went out to try to download it. It was like, sorry, you cannot install this game. And I'm like, what the hell? I own it.
Yep.
You're telling me while the game's still up and running, I can't download it and hop back in for some nostalgia before it closes? I think that was a shitty move to do too.
But I mean, like I said, who owns it? They're some of the scummiest bastards on the planet.
EA was known as the shittiest company for gaming out there, and then they went silent for a while, and a couple other companies stepped in and said, "Hold my beer."
Yeah,
but this just proves that they are still on board with that. But like I said, I honestly don't think that a game. I do think that we should have access to games forever, and what that looks like is different for every game, I think. And it's hard because it's hard to say like a game that's only on PlayStation. Like, how do you do that? If let's say Anthem was a PlayStation only game, let's just hypothetically, it's a PlayStation only game. You really don't have mod support in that aspect, right?
No.
Unless you're going to go into that console and be doing some crap you're not supposed to be modifying pack files and bin files and everything that you're not supposed to point to a new update server, a new login server, all that kind of stuff. And it's more trouble than it's worth. But on a PC, modding and doing stuff like that is pretty common, right? I've got into the Earth and Beyond and the Star Wars Galaxies, and you install the base game, and then you go in and you modify some files and say, hey, this is where you go to hit the login server. You need to update this file, and this is where you put in for the update server, and you put it in this file. You know, things like that is pretty common on the PC side, but not on the console side. So it's a little bit rougher for that. On PC, it's a lot easier to do things like that. So it's got a lot of nuance and gray areas that you have to get around, but especially on the PC, I think that PC market is a game has to be around forever. If you make an online game, I don't mean you have to support it forever, but you have to have an exit strategy, like Nick said. But I don't believe in relinquishing the IPs. I think that's asking way too much and being too.
You don't use it for 10 years. You know, it's my toy now. Use it.
I mean, game development takes 6 to 7. Game development takes, especially on the trip. And I'm going to say this, and I'm laughing under my breath. AAA and quadruple A games take 6 to 9 years to make. So if you're saying 10 years,
all right, 11. I'll give you some.
I mean, I think even copyright laws today are longer than that. Like they're like 20, 30 years.
Well, we need to fix that. My problem is it just feels like the consumer, the gamer, has no protections.
When you say we lease a game, I think that's a horrible cop out.
It's all one-sided. It's all purely for the corporation, the company, the developer. It's like I can look over here or over there, and I've got games I can play offline, but they're 15 years old. Plus,
as long as you have the console, right?
Yes, exactly. I got my babies back there. I break out and I play old games. But I think forcing a game to mandatorily be forced to be online all the time to be able to play is wrong.
I mean, that's what Good Old Games is around for too, right? They've been removing DRM for stuff for years, and that's their whole thing is making games compatible with current OSs on PC and also removing the DRM for them.
Yeah, and that is beautiful, but I think that should be mandatory. I don't think you should be able to do that. I just, not everybody can afford internets. Not everybody can afford, a high-end PC or the next generation game console. And if I want to play an older game because, I don't have the newest stuff, I shouldn't be forced away from the games that I paid for. It just burns me. So if you were to pop on the Anthem and it tells you, hey, sorry, you can't play this now, but I bought it. I gave you money. This is a transaction we completed together. I just think that the gamers, the consumer needs to be better protected.
I can remember when the whole DRM thing was like blowing up everywhere, where you had to always be online to play their games because DRM was people were hacking it and bypassing it. And then they're like, all right, well, the best DRM is that you always have to be always online. And I remember when that was a big hoopla, but guess what? Gamers cried and whined about it, but guess what? They did nothing about it. They didn't stop buying games that were DRM supported. And now look where we are. You got good old games around because somebody has to strip DRM out of the game once the game is no longer being sold. Because that's how I feel about a game. If you make an online game or you make any game at all and you decide to stop supporting it and also stop making it available anywhere, like because today buying a physical copy of a game is not always, especially on the PC, is pretty much nigh impossible. You need to release a source code because somebody else can strip out the DRM of your software and make it available to other people through a mod or whatever. But I think that if you decide that you're going to delist your game, shut down servers, you need to make the source code public use. That's just where I stand on it. Doesn't mean I lose the IP or anything like that. That's just where I stand hard and fast. You need to put source code out there for free. Free use, public use source code, open source. And that's my opinion. I don't know, what I'd like to hear from all the people out there. What do you think should happen to these games that shut down? And I give Nick a hard time about Anthem, but that's just because he was the first one to give up the goat on Anthem and decide I'm done. Because we did play the hell out of it. We played the hell out of it for a while.
It was a great game. It was great gameplay. Let's say that much because, 4 friends flying around, slapping monsters on the butt. It was a fun game. It was something we were also all hyped for too. It wasn't, one of us was like, I don't know, but I'll get it because you guys are. No, we were all hyped for it. Even we used to have a 4th friend and he was hyped for it too. And we all jumped in together and we all had such a wonderful time. And then when you completed everything that was available, which wasn't much, that's the part that, it pissed Nick off and I don't blame him. I could play a little more repetition probably of that game than he could. But, once one guy drops off, then everybody drops off because that's just the way we roll.
You want the whole group. Yeah. Yeah. So, Nick, you got anything else I know you had you went first, but you were also the least outspoken so far about guarding your opinions.
No, I don't think I have anything else to add.
All right.
He's got to yank it.
He's got to yank it. So, let us know. What do you think down in the comments? What do you think should happen to games that basically become unplayable or delisted? Do you think companies need to have an exit plan, a publicly known exit plan? Do you think there needs to be some type of, legislation around this, some type of guidance for companies? Because we are entering the market. We are entering new territory for games. And what I mean by new territories is we're quickly running into that game's never been available physically. So what happens when it's delisted somewhere? You can no longer play it, but you bought it. You bought it on Steam. You can get it there forever, but something happens and Steam no longer has that game available for download or something else. You get it from good old games. The forever game concept. Let us know what you think down in the comments. We'd like to hear, maybe you think we're off base and you have a better idea. I mean, there's got to be ideas out there for somehow to make these games around forever if you've already done it. Obviously, if you make it open source, it's free for everybody at that point. Nobody's allowed to charge for it if you make it an open source software. There needs to be, like if anybody's in IT and who like CNCF is, they're like the open source people for public access of cloud native solutions, right? Cloud native Foundation, CNCF. They host a program where applications can come into market, grow, and become a full-fledged application, and it's something that can be released out in the wild, and it's free for use as a company. There needs to be something like that for games, like old games that are retirement go into this open source gaming community that takes over stewardship of the game. So let us know what you think down in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this episode, you've reached the end of it, and you're not subscribed, how come? Help us out. You've reached the end of this episode. So hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to get notified when we put out new videos. We put out multiple videos every week. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus over the last month or so due to holidays and people being sick. As you can hear, Shane and I are coughing up storm, trying to get over this stuff, but we're getting back into the swing of it. So we hope you enjoyed this episode and hope to catch you in the next one.
See ya.